Welcome to the 97 Republic YouTube channel, where I react to UFC news and live events. So I kindly ask that you hit the like button and the subscribe button, as that will really help this channel grow. And to ensure that you don't skip a beat, feel free to click the notification bell. That way you can guarantee that you don't miss any of the action. I really hope you enjoy this. Main card predictions for UFC Fight Night: Edwards versus Brady from the O2 Arena, starting right now. So we start off the main card in the featherweight division when Nathaniel Wood is taking on Morgan Charriere. Now, with regards to their respective professional records, Nathaniel Wood is 20-6, Morgan Charriere is 20-10-1. Inside of the UFC, Nathaniel Wood is 8-3 and Morgan Charriere is 2-1. So a lot of experience for Nathaniel Wood, especially within the UFC, where he has the upper hand in experience. And with regards to Nathaniel Wood's UFC career, he has had 5 fights at bantamweight. That's where he started. Had 1 catchweight fight and then 5 fights at featherweight, where he is currently at right now. In his featherweight career within the UFC, he has had 4 wins and only lost once. So a really impressive record for Nathaniel Wood. He is a good boxer, has good head movement, has a high guard, doesn't get hit a lot, has good low kicks, and also has a nasty front kick to the stomach, which he utilizes. Has somewhat good wrestling, but doesn't really use it. And Morgan Charriere is predominantly a grappler. The only problem is he doesn't really use it. Apart from defensively, Morgan Charriere doesn't use his grappling. He is somewhat fallen in love with the striking, and you can see why. Due to the fact that he has really good timing, has power in those shots, and he is a really good striker, much more of a volume striker, when Nathaniel Wood, I'd say, is more technical. And I'm picking Nathaniel Wood to win this fight due to the fact that Morgan Charriere, even though he has good grappling credentials, good striking credentials, he does keep his hands low, so he is susceptible to eating shots. And with Nathaniel Wood's timing, with his accuracy, I do think that he would get caught. I don't think he gets knocked out. Nathaniel Wood wins by unanimous decision. Then moving on to the second fight in the lightweight division, with Jordan Vucenic versus Chris Duncan. Now, with regards to their respective careers, their professional careers, Vucenic is 13-3 and Chris Duncan is 12-2. Difference is Chris Duncan has had 4 fights within the UFC, and Vucenic has had 1 fight within the UFC, and that fight he ended up losing in his debut. With regards to their skill set, it is somewhat opposite of one another, due to the fact that Vucenic is predominantly a striker, would use his wrestling if he has to, but he's a good technical striker. He uses a lot of feints to see what his opponent is doing. If he needs to wrestle, he would, but preferably he would want the fight play out on the feet, due to the fact that he has really good striking. His punches are really quick, and he mixes it up really well with regards to his striking, where Chris Duncan is more, I'd say, more of a brawler. He likes the chaos, thrives in it, wants to make it an ugly fight, and basically at the end of it all, wants to have the fight playing on the ground where he has top control. So it's somewhat the striker versus the grappler. And keep in mind, Vucenic, prior to coming to the UFC, was at Cage Warriors, where he was a champion and fought really tough opponents. For example, he fought Morgan Charriere and ended up beating him. Yes, the same Morgan Charriere that is fighting on the main card prior to his fight. That same guy. And Morgan is really good. And Vucenic ended up beating him. So Vucenic does have good experience outside of the UFC, seeing that a lot of the guys he fought, or some guys rather he fought in Cage Warriors, ended up being UFC fighters as well. With that being said, I feel like he is somewhat unlucky due to the fact that he lost in his debut. I don't think it was an unfair result. I think he genuinely did lose that fight, but you could see his inexperience, where he had the skill set to win that fight. Just felt like he was unlucky to not get the victory. And had he had more experience, he would probably have won that fight. So I'm picking Jordan Vucenic to win this fight as well. I don't think he knocks Chris Duncan out. I think this goes to unanimous decision as well. I think Jordan would basically just be a little bit too quick for Chris Duncan. I don't think that it would end in this chaos, this brawl that Duncan wants. I think Jordan is really good at dictating pace, really good at dictating range as well, and will basically just tee off on Duncan when the fight plays out on the feet. And therefore I have him winning the fight via unanimous decision. Then going into the third fight on this card, the first women's fight on this card, the only woman fight on this card at strawweight, Molly McCann versus Alexia Thainara. Now Molly is 14-7 inside of her professional career and 7-6 inside of the UFC. Thainara is 11-1 her professional career, is making her debut against Molly McCann, and we basically have the common striker versus grappler matchup, where Molly is a really good striker, really good boxer. She has 2 spinning back elbow knockouts, which is insane, fighting against Alexia Thainara, who is predominantly a grappler and prefers the fight playing out where either she's in the clinch, either she is going for a takedown, has her opponent on the ground, on top control, and basically just tee off on her opponent. The problem with Thainara's grappling is, especially if she gets a takedown, her opponents stand up relatively easily. Especially when she fought on Dana White's Contender Series. She would get the takedown, but then her opponent just stands up. She doesn't have good top control. And I do think she'll be able to take Molly down. However, I do think Molly is able to stand up. And usually with regards to women fighters, I tend to pick the more experienced one, because you have not seen technique, you have not felt power if you only fought outside of the UFC. It is different within the UFC. Once Thainara sees Molly's timing, feels that power, especially with regards to Molly's boxing, I think, I don't want to say she gives up, but I think she would be gun shy and she would lose this fight. And honestly, I think Molly wins by knockout. I think second round knockout. Molly McCann knocks out Alexia Thainara. Then heading into the fourth fight on the main card, where Gunnar Nelson is taking on Kevin Holland. So Gunnar has had 15 fights within the UFC, managed to win 10 of them. Kevin Holland, however, has had 24 fights within the UFC, managed to win 13 of them. In 7 years, Kevin Holland has had 24 fights in less than 7 years, which is insane. Which basically serves as a testament to how active Kevin Holland is. However, to his own detriment, due to the fact that if you are a Kevin Holland fan, the general consensus is that Kevin should stay at welterweight due to the fact that he can definitely be a contender at welterweight. However, Kevin just really enjoys fighting, so he decides that he wants to fight at welterweight and at middleweight. Basically, all of his wins, well, this is not really the case, but most of his wins would be at welterweight. Most of his losses would be at middleweight due to the fact that he is just not big enough to compete at middleweight. People expose his weakness, which is wrestling, just tend to take him down and then beat him on the ground. Where at welterweight, it is much more difficult to take Kevin down. And I think Gunnar Nelson's going to find out how difficult it is. So Gunnar Nelson uses his strikes to set up takedowns. And predominantly a wrestler with really good jiu-jitsu. In his 10 wins, 8 of them has been via submission. So Gunnar is an impressive jiu-jitsu practitioner. And with regards to Kevin, he uses his strikes to knock his opponents out. And he has had some incredible knockouts in his short UFC career, short relating to time, not opponents. So it is different. Gunnar uses his striking to set up takedowns. Kevin uses his striking to knock you out. And I do think it is going to be difficult for Gunnar Nelson to actually take Kevin Holland down. Now, if Gunnar takes Kevin down, the fight's over. Kevin loses. It's going to be, if he takes him down, it's going to be all over again for Kevin Holland. However, if he fails, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to figure out the fact that if Gunnar fails to take Kevin down, Gunnar is probably going to go to sleep. Because Kevin Holland has genuine power, has really good technique, has a plethora of strikes that he uses, whether it's punches, kicks, and he is a tall, lanky figure. Whether it's middleweight, whether it's welterweight, he would probably always have the reach advantage. I'm picking Kevin Holland to win this fight. I do think that he'd be able to stop the takedowns. I do think that he would be able to dominate on the ground. I think this is the point in Kevin's career where he somewhat puts an exclamation mark on a fight and decides that he will probably stay at welterweight and genuinely make a run for being a either champion or #1 contender at welterweight. I think this is where Kevin realizes what he could actually accomplish within the UFC if he just stays at welterweight, please. Then moving on to the co-main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg in the light heavyweight division. So Jan has had 20 fights within the UFC, managed to win 12 of them. Carlos Ulberg has had 9 fights within the UFC, managed to win 8 of them, and has been on an insane run of form, where out of those 8 victories, he is currently on a 7-fight winning streak, where he basically lost after winning in his debut, ended up losing the second fight inside of the UFC, and then went on a 7-fight winning streak. And with regards to Carlos Ulberg's skill set, it feels like he is pretty well rounded, due to the fact that he is comfortable wherever the fight takes place. If he has to grapple, he will grapple. Out of Carlos's 8 wins inside the UFC, 6 of them has been via stoppage, where 4 of them has been via knockout, 2 of them via submission. So he is a really good, well-rounded fighter, and feels like he is destined to be a #1 contender. And I do think that this fight serves as a #1 contender's bout, due to the fact that if Ankalaev wins, this fight is 100% a #1 contender's bout. Where if Pereira wins in the rematch, it might be, I don't know, Pereira might fight Yuri again. It's difficult to see if Pereira wins the rematch. If Ankalaev wins the rematch, this is where your next challenger would come from. The winner of Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. And with regards to Jan, he has to feel confident due to the fact that the current sitting light heavyweight champion ended up drawing or getting a draw against Jan when they fought. And Jan Blachowicz, even though he lost to Alex Pereira, a lot of people felt like he won that fight, including myself, even though I'm a massive Sharma fan. I do honestly feel like Jan Blachowicz ended up winning that fight against Alex Pereira. So Jan would feel hard done by. Is he still motivated? I believe so. It has been a year and a half, more than a year and a half when we last saw Jan inside the octagon, but I do think he's still motivated. Now, does he have the Yoel Romero serum where he just basically doesn't age? We will find out. Jan Blachowicz is also a very good, well-rounded fighter. I do think something that he could expose, a weakness of Carlos Ulberg, is via his leg kicks. Jan has brutal leg kicks. We saw that in the Ankalaev fight where he basically just blasted Ankalaev's legs, both of them, just blasted them away. I do think he would take the same approach against Carlos Ulberg. However, with that being said, I have to take Carlos Ulberg in this fight. I feel like Carlos is the better striker. Now, legendary Polish power. Jan Blachowicz definitely has the edge in power. However, Carlos is quicker. He's not as big of a light heavyweight. He moves better. He is quicker. His timing on his shots is really good. We saw Alonzo Menafield trying to blitz him and got absolutely smoked. So I do feel like Carlos would have the upper hand when the fight plays out on the feet. When Jan tries to wrestle Carlos Ulberg, I don't know whether Carlos would actually be able to resist Jan's wrestling. However, I do feel like Carlos, it just feels inevitable. It feels like he's on this destined path to either fight or be the light heavyweight champion. Either fight for the light heavyweight champion's belt or be the light heavyweight champion. The guy is really good, and I think this is where he establishes himself as being a #1 contender. I have Carlos Ulberg winning, and I think he wins by a knockout. I think the year and a half layoff for Jan might be detrimental to his chances of winning this fight. I think Jan might get knocked out. We have seen Jan get knocked out inside of the UFC, I think it could happen. And I think Carlos Ulberg would be the person to do it, due to the fact that he has really good timing, he's really accurate, has power as well. I'm gonna say Carlos Ulberg by a second round knockout. Then heading into the main event in the welterweight division, where Leon Edwards is taking on Belal Muhammad 2.0 Sean Brady. So Leon has had 18 fights within the UFC, managed to win 14 of them, where Sean has had 8 fights within the UFC, managed to win 7 of them. And Leon's last loss came to Belal Muhammad. Sean's only loss in his career came to Belal Muhammad. And I do feel like this fight might be a replica of what we saw when Leon fought Belal, due to the fact that Belal Muhammad and Sean Brady, with regards to how they fight, they're basically the same person, where their fighting style is predicated on a lot of volume, takedowns, volume, pressure, boxing, with the emphasis of not really necessarily knocking you out, just draining you and everything wearing on you. Wrestling, not necessarily with the goal of winning by submission or winning by ground and pound, but just basically to drain you and have you depleted and dominate the fight. And this feels like a Leon Edwards weakness, due to the fact that Leon is the polar opposite. His fighting style is predicated on efficiency, it's predicated on timing. There's not a lot of volume. He just basically has a lot of one-off shots, but he is so technical that he could get away with it and potentially knock you out in your rematch, the same way he did against Usman, where he got dominated by Kamaru Usman. Up until that head kick, he got dominated and would have lost the fight indefinitely. And had the leg kick, or rather, had the head kick, knocked Kamaru Usman out, and ended up being champion. And that is basically Leon Edwards' fighting style. We saw it against Corby as well. We didn't see just constant domination from Leon Edwards. We saw him win a few rounds, take off other rounds, then basically just coast to a unanimous decision victory. We saw it in the Kamaru Usman, the third fight, where Leon had to work to get the win. I'm not taking anything away from him, not discrediting Leon Edwards, but it wasn't domination. Leon would look like Prime Anderson Silva the first round, and then go on to look like CM Punk the second and third, and then look like Prime Anderson Silva for the fourth and fifth round. There is no consistency with regards to Leon Edwards and the way he fights, and I do think this could be a problem for him. I am picking Sean Brady to win this fight. I will bet on Leon, and I will predict Leon to win a fight once I've seen Leon dominate 5 rounds. If Leon could have a pace where he fights for the entirety of the fight, fights the same way he did in the 5th round, at the end of the 5th round against Belal, I'd start picking Leon. Up until that point, I am not predicting Leon to win a fight. I don't care against who it is. Due to the fact that I think Leon is insane, I think he is really good. However, he does have a blatant weakness, and it feels like this. I think Sean would execute the exact same game plan that Belal did. Just constant pressure, moving forward constantly, ensuring that Leon doesn't fight on the front foot, because Leon is really dangerous off of the front foot. When he's a back foot striker, doesn't feel as dangerous. Constant pressure, constant takedowns, whether it succeeds or not doesn't matter. Constant volume, constant boxing. I think Sean Brady wins by unanimous decision. And that's basically my predictions for UFC Fight Night, Edwards versus Brady. Let me know in the comment section, do you agree? And if not, which fight don't you agree with what do you disagree? And enjoy UFC Fight Night, Edwards versus Brady.